water, not a thought of giving in. I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. Welcome to the shrimp tank. Wanna put it all together, this is big things. Doing big things, chasing big dreams. Yeah, it's all real, this life's all that it seems. All the chicks scream, all the dudes yell. This is just what I do and I do it well. With the flow fresher than the new shoe smell. Going through hell, well homie keep going. You know the saying, you gon' reap what you're sowing. So I don't chase girls, I just chase dreams. Play the same game, but we ain't in the same league. Running a campaign, Roadie 2016. Like a phone to die, put me in charge. I'm a general, from the front I'ma lead the charge. Like a federal, fell on my lap never. Going hard as ever.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank powered by Celsius Beverage. If this is your first time tuning in, you catch all these amazing episodes up on our website, shrimptankpodcast.com. We bring to you the best and brightest entrepreneurs from South Florida, joined by my co-host, Dr. Kevin Cox. He's the director at the Adams Center, FAU Adams Center for Entrepreneurship. Kevin, before we get into today's guests, what is happening over at FAU?
Oh, well, you know, things never stop around here at FAU. Last week, we had our big, fantastic blowout pitch competition with the 4 different tracks, students, youth, Spanish, and veterans track. More on that in a minute. And we celebrated the next night, had more than 250 people out at Tech Runway, named some winners, and you think things might be slowing down, but that's not the case. We're rolling right through. This morning. I had the luxury of teaching all 110 startups associated with the Emerge Americas competition and a big conference down in South Beach about customer discovery. So I taught them some things. They asked some hard questions. Seems like a really sharp group, some very cool technologies. And then tonight, as we continue, 5:30, we onboard the brand new class of Tech Runway accelerator companies. So busy days, lots of activities. It's a great time to be in the South Florida entrepreneurship ecosystem, unless you don't like being too busy. Then it's not the best, but there's a lot of opportunities out there.
Okay, give the entrepreneurs out there a couple tips on where to go first. I often hear entrepreneurs, quit their 9 to 5, and they want to be part of these incubators. They live in South Florida, and it just seems overwhelming. They see ones at FAU, then they're not sure if it's for students or for seasoned entrepreneurs. Then they have one at Levan Center. And then, we just had 1909 on last week. They have one, right? And then, of course, FPL, with 35 Mules, there's ones there. But, you can't do all this stuff. And then there's, Y Combinator. You can do stuff and fly out of the state. You know, if you get lucky enough to be a participant in one of those programs. But, where do you start? And then there's all these events. And I just think sometimes it's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, well, first tip, don't quit your 9 to 5 job. Keep that for a little while, or as long as you can, ideally. In addition to that, start working on some of those basic fundamentals of your business, having conversations, setting up meetings, and develop a business model, get some basic customer feedback, and then start with one of the accelerators that might be a little bit more incubator, maybe not quite as competitive. Certainly Tech Runway, that is the case for student track, but from community track, it's pretty competitive to get in. But it's similar to Nova's. The 1909 is a really good option for early stage and particularly entrepreneurs in the arts. So, at some point when you're a little bit more advanced, you might apply to multiple and see where you get in. The more notable, more nationally wide known accelerator programs are typically going to be really hard to get in. They're not for early stage companies. So those would be your Techstars or your Y Combinator. And they really want you to have a very technological or innovative oriented project, which we don't necessarily require. So there's a ton of options out there. I know somebody's working on a platform right now that's going to help match startups to accelerators. So integrate some AI, a decision tree, because there are thousands around the United States, and that should be able to, if it works, these things go, optimize.
They're on the podcast.
Optimize the
about Raislink
into definitely.
Yeah, Pete Martinez was here back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right when they were in the early days of creating it, and then they switched developers, and now they're finally at launch, of course. So
yeah,
I hope it works, because it could be extremely helpful to our local economy down here in South Florida.
Yeah.
because it's a mess with trying to raise capital and just, have a matching service so no one's wasting as much time. And I'm just going to give a tip the old fashioned way is go to Emerging Americas and shake hands at those booths, right? Most of those incubators are there, and often people just apply and then they have to get lucky to get in or have such amazing stats on their pitch deck. But if you know someone there, like if you went to the event last week at FU Tech Runway, you get to shake the hands of Jessica Beaver, and likely she'll give you her email. And then, of course, when they're looking at all the different brands, you have a higher, chance likely to get in.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And always, we never want to forget about the good old entrepreneur boot camp.
Ooh,
By FAU's
ooh.
Adams Center. That's a great place to start. It'll provide you with the tools and resources to prepare you for those applications. It's only 8 weeks. Piece of cake.
Cool. Well, let's get into our guests today. Of course, this is the podcast we get to ask these difficult questions to these entrepreneurs, finding the do's and don'ts of running a business. Our two guests today have podcasts themselves, so it's nice to, of course, be on the other side, right, guys, and get to ask you guys some questions versus you asking other entrepreneurs questions. So we got Angelo and Natalia in the Shrimp Tank studio today. They are the founders of Barracks Legend Foundation. So to kick things off, I'll let Natalia go first. Tell us a little bit about the organization, and then we'll switch gears to Angelo, and talk about the partnership that you guys formed. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure to serve your audience. My name is Natalia Earle. I am a Chief Operating Officer of the Barracks Legend Foundation, which was created last year. We're coming up on our first birthday this May, and our mission is to host electrifying events to draw veterans out of isolation into a loving community that understands, supports, and loves them. So the biggest issue that we are facing in the community is 44 veterans a day take their lives. And that number is too high. It's definitely unacceptable. And as a civilian, I had a pleasure of hearing Angelo as a keynote speaker at one of the fundraisers last year. And when he discussed all the issues that our brave men and women were facing, I was that ignorant civilian sitting there asking questions like, what do you mean? You guys are taken care of. The government has your back. What do you mean you don't have resources? Or what do you mean you're not provided the help that you need at the moment that you do? So these were the questions that I had, and what started from a podcast interview, because my podcast covers adversities and failures and what makes us resilient. We are in 53 countries, and I love to talk to entrepreneurs, to regular people, because everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has been through something, and a majority of us love to share our success stories. But what about the dark side? Because success doesn't come without the dark side. So tell me what it looked like, who got you through it, what resources, organizations helped you, and how did you overcome it, and what have you learned from it? So I wanted to have an interview with Angelo just to expose obviously the things that are happening in the community, and how can my listeners and my community give them a support, because we can all serve our country without serving our country. And to me, that spoke to me. And as we started working together, I realized how incredibly talented he was at raising money and talking to people about the issues that were happening with the military community. And I was like, why haven't you opened your own nonprofit or your own foundation? And he told me that, he didn't have right people around him. So I was like, I'll help you. How different can a nonprofit be from profit? Well, let me tell you, that was a big lesson for me to learn.
Yeah, there's some paperwork involved.
They're really different. I was like, I've been in a profit world, and I've been self-employed for 7 years. I know how to build a business, how to run a business, the back of the house. And that's where my strength is, because he's an innovator and I'm an integrator. He comes up with these incredible ideas, and sometimes I have to ground him like an airplane and say, oh, we don't have money for that. We can't really do it. But I'm also great at operations, right? Making things happen. So I think that's why our partnership has worked, and that's why we are where we are today.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful. And let's go to Angelo, recent winner of our Veterans Pitch competition track. Angelo's an interesting guy. So he's always kind of quiet during class and not real outspoken. But boy, when he does decide to speak, he is phenomenal. So I'm glad to have you speaking here today on the podcast. Tell us a little bit about how you do get started with a nonprofit, right? That's a really tricky thing to start. It's really given I'm the entrepreneurship guy, whatever that's worth. It's tricky to get started. You're not going to be able to generate revenue, traditional revenue from sales, but it's going to cost you some money to start. You need a website, you need some branding. This is something we're talking about in my class right now is those initial startup costs. Where's that going to come from? You can't raise money from investors because you're not going to have retained earnings and growth because it's a nonprofit. So how did you go about doing that at the very initial start?
Well, thank you again for having us on. It's pretty neat to be here at FAU because I'm a FAU alumni. I got my degree in exercise science here, so I like to look at it as a full circle to be able to come here and do this. And thank you for hosting that class for the veteran track. It's very, very, very useful. All the information that we received in that class did help us substantially in the process of expanding, growing, and hosting events. And it shined a light on a lot of things that we weren't sure about, and it forced us to do more work. Not that we don't have enough work to do already, but I am the founder CEO of the Barracks Legend Foundation. I served 8 years in the Marine Corps Infantry, and I struggled with suicide. And what really brought us to create that was in 2019, on December 12th, I had decided to kill myself. And as I got up to retrieve the AK-47 that my roommate had in his room, my phone rang, and I answered. It was a Marine I had recently met, and he said, "Come out, come shoot a video." And I said, "Okay, it beats what's going to happen right now." So I went out there, shot a video. We dressed up as Navy SEAL Christmas elves. We stormed the beach, and we had a ton of fun. But I remember coming back to this broken futon that I was living on. Previous to that, I was just about homeless, and saying to myself, I don't have to die anymore. I don't have to kill myself. Because I was filled with so much joy and happiness being around these other soldiers, sailors, and Marines, these other men and women that had served, very like-minded, right? And I realized I had to cling to this veteran, and I did. And that's kind of where this created the Barracks Legend Foundation. And, creating the foundation was interesting because, as Natalia said, I had for probably a year prior to meeting her, really wanted to start something. And the people that I had around me didn't have, their hearts didn't align with what my mission was. And I don't, if you haven't figured this out yet, Natalia and I don't take a dime from any of the money raised. And a lot of people, their perspectives are, well, I have to get paid. I got to get money. And that's understandable because people have bills to pay and the economy obviously is not the greatest right now. But we believe that someone's life is far greater than monetary, right? Like your life matters. There's no price on it. There's none. And that made me realize that all the people that I was around at that time weren't the right people to do it with. And when I met Natalia, Natalia was at this event, and it sparked that fire. And I will say that the number for veteran suicide was 22 a day, but they were not incorporating alcohol related and drug overdoses. So from 22, if you add those statistics, it shoots up to 44 veterans a day, uh, even more. But 44 is where it's at right now, and it's it, knowing my friends have taken their lives, knowing other people that have been impacted. This is obviously terrible, but just think of 44 people that take their lives. I'm a Marine Corps infantryman. 44 Marines is a platoon. So that means a Marine Corps platoon is killing themselves off every single day. And that's hard for me to grasp. But what can I do? I'm not going to do, it's not a shot or jab at people that do the 22 push-ups and stuff like that. But that doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what does do something. Let me call my friends I've gone to Iraq with. Let me call my friends. Let me call the Marine soldiers and sailors I've met along the way to check in and see how they're doing. Let me host these events that continue to draw them out of isolation, because I may not know what they're going through, but I can tell you that when they come out of those dark places and they step into the light and they step around all these other soldiers, sailors, and Marines, that they're very different and they're far more alive than what they were 15, 20, 30 minutes ago, being alone in their own world. So creating that and doing that, and we've been, I'm extremely blessed to have a business partner like Natalia who's able to facilitate and organize things, because I'm not the most organized person.
Yeah, events and activities are tough. Trust me. You just got through a couple of them. I'm not the most organized either.
I'm organized, but they're still just a pain in the butt. There's so many more moving
Yeah.
parts than anyone realizes with events these days.
And
people don't want to always go to events. It's like hard to get them out of their couch mode. Say, hey, come attend.
I'm always glad to go, planning not as much. It's much fun to attend. Much more fun.
A lot more fun to attend. Not as much to facilitate. So creating this with no money was a good start. So we put our own money in. I think we put in probably close to $20,000 of our own money just in the first year, from the paperwork to facilitating some of the events ourselves.
Yeah, not bad though. I mean, that's pretty lean to get a nonprofit organization off of the ground. I mean, you must have worked very efficiently, but yeah, I figured it would still take some funding.
Yeah, very efficiently.
Yeah.
Can you explain the events in more detail and just, more details of the foundation? So
yeah, absolutely.
Our audience really gets an understanding of what it's all about and where you're going in the future as well.
So to piggyback off of what Natalia was saying, so we do host electrifying events from shark dives to axe throwing to comedy shows, from little to no cost to the veteran, that draw these veterans out of isolation into community to improve mental health and prevent veteran suicide. So these events, again, they're not just like, hey, come join us for some coffee, which is great, but that's not as exciting as jumping into the water with a bunch of bull sharks and tiger sharks, which can be terrifying, which I can give you a story later. But, these events are very well thought out. They're very much so in the process of what's going to draw their attention and where can we host this event that's going to be the most efficient for them to come, because we are obviously based out of Boca, but we have veterans that come from West Palm, Miami. For our shark dive, we, out of the 16 veterans that showed up, half of them were out of state, and by out of state I mean Missouri, Georgia. We had one from Texas. So they come from out of state, because that's how, I won't say desperate they are, but I'll say that's how important it is for them to come do something like this with people that love and understand them.
And how often do you do these events?
These events happen 2 to 3 times a month.
So you are always planning.
Oh boy, yeah,
It's
that's
like always like one event, then on to the next, to the next. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, and this goes into kind of what the veteran my pitch was, because some of our competition, I don't look at them as competition, because we believe in collaboration over competition. right?
Sure. Same thing in the entrepreneurship domain, which is when I always reference the ecosystem. I'm always glad to talk about other accelerators and other resources for entrepreneurs.
Right.
Absolutely not competition here either. And we're also, of course, a nonprofit.
And we don't like to look at that. A lot of nonprofits do because they
Well, there's only so much donor money to go around.
Well,
So that's kind of where the arguments are, but they're all
them.
unique.
To them, there's only a little bit of donor money to go around. But Florida's a really big state.
Yeah.
There are tons of foundation, tons of grants. There's tons of small businesses that are more than happy to donate or be creative in supporting nonprofits. If you can't donate, there's always unique ways that we can find that are beneficial to us. Because we've had one of our sponsors, Modern Rose, Air Force owned, super awesome guy, Emilio, and he couldn't donate at that time. And he said, I want to support this, but how can I do it right now without monetary value? And I said, well, let's create a drink. Let's create because he owns Modern Roads. It's a coffee boutique shop, and they're fantastic. So he created the Barracks Legend drink. And now 20% from that purchase always goes back to our foundation. And that goes to all 4 stores. And he doesn't have to give us money up front. It's just however many people buy drinks. And that's all that matters to us, is that he's supporting us and putting it out there.
Yeah, and I imagine there could be a lot of those with in-kind services to host or co-host events. It's the same with us with like professional services like tax attorneys or intellectual property attorneys or other professional services that entrepreneurs may use. So those in-kind gifts aren't necessarily cash out the door, but they're valuable for the stakeholders. Right. So they represent a good and oftentimes pretty tax efficient.
Yep.
Because there is still a monetary value associated with it, way to partner up with some of these organizations. So I completely agree. If you get a little more creative, you don't have to worry about competition, kind of the rising tide saying lifts all boats, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And that's one thing that we are very good at, is being extremely creative. And we, to answer your question too, where we're going, as of right now, we're South Florida based, but we have our first deployed event in Destin, Florida. So we will be providing a comedy show for the air stations up there, and we've already started a expansion of the Barracks Legend in another state. So it's already starting to grow, which is exciting and terrifying at the same time. Because again, it is just Natalia and I, and it's challenging, but it's worth every second of every day.
Yeah, that sounds like a great event. And if you're looking for like an opening act for that, a lot of people don't know this, but Jason's a big open mic guy. He's always trying out new material. You know, he's got a tight 5-10 minute set anywhere, anytime. So if you run into Jason, ask him about that.
I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah.
I am. It's one of my secrets, of course. You talk about, raising capital, and Talia mentioned, you're really good at it. So what are some tricks, when you go out to seek funding for this business? Everyone typically knows like, oh, go out and try to apply for a grant, but what are the unique ways that you've found success?
I'll say that there's no real trick to it. It's more so, what is your mission, right? And what is your story? And I find that when I share my story, surprisingly, a lot of people resonate in some sort of fashion. We recently met a couple. Like, I have an eye for Marines, so if I see a Marine that's wearing a giant Eagle Globe and Anchor chain, which is very rare that someone would wear that, I spot it. I see it. I know what the Eagle Globe and Anchor in the Marine Corps looks like. So I go up to him and I go, "Hey, are you a Marine?" He goes, "Yes, I am a Marine." It's like, awesome. We start chit-chatting, and I tell him about our foundation, and he puts his hand on my shoulder. He's a relatively large man, and he goes, "You know what? My wife's sister's husband just killed himself." Just and the mission resonates with them.
Yeah.
Because obviously that happened, but you have no idea the impact of suicide until you ask somebody.
Yeah.
And it's just very random. Uh, I mean, 44 veterans, right? Right now, female veterans are 2 times, almost 3 times as likely to take their own lives. That was never the case years ago, but that's what's happening right now. That's the scale that's happening right now. That's just the veteran community. You just remove all the demographics, all that, people are just taking their lives because they're lonely, isolated, they're hurting, and
There's trauma also.
I really like how you phrase it. For everybody listening out there in the audience, all the FAU students, is as you're speaking, I'm getting the tingles. So what you're saying is there's no secret. It's the going up to people and just telling them a true story.
Yeah.
You don't have to bullshit them. You don't have to make up some silly graphics. You just keep it super simple. 44 individuals daily this is occurring to, and it resonates. And a lot of times they operate a business, and I'm assuming then some of these events could even be free, right? You don't, or they're giving it to you at cost, I'm assuming.
These events that we host are free for veterans.
No, the location, I'm saying.
The location.
They have costs themselves, obviously, for
it
axe throwing.
depends.
So I'm assuming like axe throwing, they're like, hey, usually we charge $50 an individual, but for you, we'll give it a cost or for free because they want to get back.
So for something like axe throwing, because obviously, like you said, they're a business. They did 25. They did 25% off of every single veteran, plus 25% off of the entire area, plus 25% off the bar.
Yeah.
That still costs us what? It costs us a pretty penny. But to see 45 veterans that half of them have never known each other or met each other now, and this is like a year ago. Now
and then it just works via word of mouth at that point. It doesn't have to be
barbecues.
Facebook ads. It doesn't have to be Instagram. It could just literally be come to this event. It's an amazing experience. And then they tell 5 more friends, and then it continuously grows. And I think that's the point we want to, make sure everyone in our audience really understands it. It doesn't always have to be this cool clickbait ad on social media or a TikTok video. It could be a traditional relationship, and it just converts over to 5 more relationships, then 10 more to scale a business. And you're doing exactly that, which we always talk about on the show, is that the foundation of most of these businesses that we get to interview, it's through relationships. Yeah. And how much impact just one at a time can really have on a business. So we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump to our next segment of the show.
Join the fastest growing community of professionals on the internet with OWL. Access new networks and otherwise unreachable professional contacts through the one-on-one call feature on the app. Scroll through the list of available professionals and join them for a quick call to build rich connections, expand invaluable relationships, and to broaden your professional landscape without needing lofty referrals. OWL. We bring vetted pros to your doorstep 24/7 on demand. Join our community by signing up at owl.com today.
Welcome back to the Boca Raton Shrimp Tank. And in our next segment, we always like to find out what is hot. And I will kick things off in terms of what is hot. Look at this. This segment's getting exciting. Duke even woke up. He hasn't participated in the show yet. I think he was getting a little bit bored, but now we'll get it going. So I want to know, what is the hottest, most electrifying event that is on your radar? Maybe something that she's already told you, Angelo. No, we can't afford that. We can't do that. What is that event?
We have so many.
That's about 90% of the events I pitched to her.
Is there one that stands out that would be maybe immensely costly or just a little bit much? You've already mentioned some exciting ones you've actually done. So what's one you haven't been able to do?
I think the one that we talked about that is super exciting, but we could not do it this year, was taking the veterans to go drive and ride tanks up in Orlando, in Tank America.
All right.
And they can drive over cars, drive over vehicles. It's pretty
fun. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm
Pretty
in.
gnarly at there.
Yeah.
I'll volunteer that day.
There you go. You can check people in or something. All right. Now we're going to take hopefully a couple questions from the students.
Remember, Kevin, I'm going to make the jokes.
Hi
Remember.
guys. First of all, thank you for everything you do. I mean, it just sounds like an amazing effort. Thank you. And thank you for being here. My question would be, I know we spoke about how important word of mouth is to your advertising efforts, but what other advertising does your foundation do?
We also do, again, it comes down to that human relations, right? I think in the world of that's been driven by hyper like social media and everything is technology, right? I think people still crave that personal relationships. So we show up a lot of times face to face with our corporate sponsors and corporate partners, and we actually invite them out to our events. And we want them to meet veterans. We want them to hear their stories from veterans themselves. And we have one of our amazing partners, I won't mention the name just in case. And they've come out to a couple of our events. And this year, right away in the first quarter, when they made a donation to us, they're like, we want to be part of the shark dive, because they see. And last year at the shark dive, just to give you an example, when we saw people going on the boat with the body language and with the mindset that they showed up, people that left were two different humans. They were smiling, they were interacting with one another. Like, I saw so much impact that I looked at Angelo and I said, I'm in, work me to death, because now I see firsthand the impact that we are having on our veterans. So again, inviting them to our events, telling them our stories, and asking them, what can we bring to the table for them? Because a lot of times what we forget is we take, but we never give something back. So with those questions, we stand out. What can we do for you in return? So we do a lot of media coverage. We have a videographer at every event, or we mic them up. We ask them, why do they have a heart for veterans? We send speakers to their events. We host our events in their locations. So it's not about taking, it's also about giving back. And every month I send out a newsletter to every single sponsor. It doesn't matter if you donated $1 or 5, 10, 20, $100,000, they get a newsletter to see exactly where their money goes.
All right, let's dig into this shark dive thing a little bit more. Now, Angelo referenced bull sharks and tiger sharks, and I do some free diving, more snorkeling, kind of, if I'm honest, these days. But I don't mind seeing a shark at all. But I'm kind of hoping that it's like a nurse shark. That's ideal. Or maybe like a black tip reef shark, or a few of them, right? They're like 4 to 6 feet tops. They're not much bigger than you. They're not really aggressive. You reference bull sharks and tiger sharks. I don't usually really like to see them very much, especially bull sharks that will kind of eat anything just to be like, oh, I'll try it. Like, what's this event about?
Well, we partnered with Shark Addicts up in Jupiter. And if you didn't know, Shark Addicts, they give veterans a significant discount to go shark dive with them. And basically, they take you on a boat. They throw chum out a certain distance, thank God. And then you go in the water and you're kind of snorkeling. And these sharks will just start showing up. Or in my case, when you go in the water, you'll land on a bull shark.
Ooh.
And then go right back on the boat.
And that bump you. You got a love tap, as they call it.
I dove in. I thought I landed on my friend who went in with me. And as I just turned around, this body just hit me. And I was like, oh, I landed on the bull shark. This ends my day right here. I'm just going to hang on the boat.
Yeah, you kind of want to look out for those. There's some friendlier sharks that really want nothing to do with you. They are not the bull type of tiger sharks, really. And they tend to get pretty big, too.
Yeah, they were pretty big. I think the biggest one was 12. I think it's a 12-footer. There's a lot of there was one tiger, there was a bunch of bull sharks, a few sand sharks. It was super cool. I mean, before that happened, I swam out towards the middle, and you just kind of look down in this blue abyss, and you just see all the sharks circling, coming, making their way up, and it's amazing. It's also terrifying because then you realize that it's just a never-ending circle of death down there somewhere.
Yeah. It sounds electrifying.
It is. It's very.
Kevin, you go to Bora Bora where I had my honeymoon, and you do it with the lemon sharks, so you don't get as scared. Next
There we
time.
go.
Okay, that way you
There
don't
we
have to get as
go.
scared.
I like that.
Okay, that's what I did on my first adventure with sharks. Let's talk a little bit about podcasting. What's hot about podcasting in general? What you guys have found, and either can answer.
What we have found is that there are a lot of stories out there that have never been told. And these stories, obviously, there are several different military branches, and they all differ in some sort of way. So, we could have gone to the same area in Iraq, but our experiences could have been very different. And these stories that they share are a variety from things they've experienced, from losing a leg to losing a fire team to overcoming hardships in marriages, because the divorce rate in the military is something about above 75%. So these stories are just untold stories of men and women that have experienced so much and overcome the odds.
And how does the podcast help for the business itself? Because I know a lot of times people do podcasts, it leads to building a relationship with that individual, and it leads to actual business, of course. So explain that side of things.
For us, that's where I feel like more buckleUp comes in, because I have access to so many different speakers, and we've gotten so much support. We have found actually one of our big projects that we are working on that we are not ready to share yet is a conference. And through this conference, we found people that do work with PTSD, trauma. They are different significant speakers, and they want to donate their time, and they're willing to help us. So podcasts gives you so much networking opportunities. And we also kind of call it our selfish project, because we learn so much from these different individuals.
Yeah.
And if you have questions, like I interviewed someone on nonprofits, and every question I had about nonprofit, I asked them. So you can use it for your advantage as well. But number one, it's the best networking, best connections outside of your region. And you can go, I've interviewed someone from Australia. And I think this is how your podcast ends up in different countries, because you take like one of the writers that I love. He said yes to me, and I was like, oh my God, I was like a kid in the candy store. I can't believe he's going to talk to me. So it expands your business. And again, it's a number one tool for networking.
How many episodes do you guys have with both shows?
So buckleUp is at 150, and our new one is about 15 episodes. But we are so overwhelmed right now because I produce and do all of it myself. So I had to pause it this last couple of months, just because, again, the conference is taking.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I was going to say,
just like events, both are a lot more.
Sounds like a great idea, but geez, you two don't shy away from the work. That's going to be a major lift. And, that it sounds like a phenomenal idea, though. I think we'll have probably at least 2 past guests that may have some interest on that. There's a lot going on in particularly the suicide and even specifically veteran suicide space in terms of alternative therapies, right? So we had the guest with the ketamine.
Zappies of Poland,
yeah, over in Tampa, who's been having some really tremendous outcomes. There are other therapies coming online as well, which is just great news. But you need a forum to share it. A conference is a great one.
Right, because we want to create that social enterprise as well that we can offer to our donors. What else are we offering? Okay, now we can expand to the conference, and we've teamed up with amazing, incredible military tech companies that they're like, we can stream it to 130 million people. And I was like, I don't think we're ready for that.
We're not quite there yet.
How do you not get too addicted to podcasting, though? Because what I see is 2 million podcasts out there, and there should probably be only 1.9 million podcasts out there, right? Most of them don't, have they just get too addicted to putting out short form video, putting on too many podcast platforms. No one's really listening, right? If we took the average student, right now, that is listening in, they'll probably say that they're listening to 3 or 4 podcasts max, right? And most individuals, same thing. So it's like people are seeing little bits of these podcasts and often get so addicted to the metrics and not addicted to the relationships that you're speaking about, right? That's my addiction, is going to meet a new individual every single week.
Same.
And pretty much then after the shrimp tank, we get to continuously have events together. We see each other in local situations in South Florida, running into each other at a pizza shop, for example. But then events, like then saying, hey, we're going to put on this event at FAU. You want to be involved. So kind of where's like that line in the sand where you're going from spending 2 hours a week to 6 hours a week, and where you're like, hey, I shouldn't cross that edge, where a lot do, unfortunately. And I kind of see their business and they're so addicted. I'm like, hey, you got to focus on like what the point of the podcast behind the scenes is.
I think it all comes down to that self-awareness, right? What that means to you. Why are you starting that podcast in the first place? And understanding that you have to control that.
Yeah.
Again, if you're doing this because you think you're going to be Joe Rogan overnight, let me break the news to you. It ain't happening. Unless you are a celebrity or an athlete that already comes with a following, it's really hard to be noticed in the podcast space because there are almost 3 million podcasters out there. 75% of them don't hit 100 episodes because people give up. Podcasting is a lot of work. It depends on the scale you want to do it. Are you going to edit it? Are you going to produce it raw? So as long as you get clear of what your mission is out of this podcast, for me, it was like, I wanted to help one person. I wanted to change one person's life because during COVID, I found we were all struggling with the same issues, but we did not have a chance to talk to each other. Regular people did not have platforms to share their stories. And I wanted to break down those silos, so to say, and I wanted to open the platform to regular people share their stories. I have a mother that lost her 3 children and her mom in a car accident. How do you overcome that? How do you continue your life? And so many of us can relate to loss, to business failures and all of that. So as long as you're clear on your why you're doing that, then you stay focused. Because to me, it never took over that I have to make money out of this podcast. I was like, if money comes, it's great. For me, again, it's my education, my networking. What am I doing for my community? And when you get messages like, you know what, the podcast that you did on IUD for women, it saved my life because I was having symptoms and I didn't know what was causing it. So I took it out. I feel so much better. Or your story helped me overcome whatever it is. Just one message, and that's all I need. And again, it depends on an individual, why you're doing it. Stay focused because it's going to open so many other doors, and people will invite you because people can relate to you. And then you can go on other people's podcasts or you can get involved. Look where it brought me. A year ago, I had a full-time job. I was doing life coaching, business coaching. I had my podcast. I was not planning to run a nonprofit foundation. And that's where I ended up, just because I was going to do an episode and interview with this guy.
Hey, it forced me over here to create buckleUp, right? And an app that you could build relationships on demand, right? Right now, at this given moment, you go in the app and call people. And it's the same thing that you're speaking about. I wanted to create a platform where people could connect easier because I thought there was just too much friction and too much isolation during COVID. I was like, this makes zero sense. Everyone's at home sitting on their couch, right? But no one could talk to one another, right? It's awkward to text someone like, hey, you want to jump on a call with one another? So after today's episode, we'll chat more about Owl because you guys will be featured next week and take some inbound calls, and it can make a major impact with veterans, I believe, because, like everything that you're discussing with events, the same thing is like they just want other veterans to chat with one-on-one, but not always to feel like on sometimes like a podcast, if you know what I mean. Like Owl's not recorded. It's all private calls. So people could be in their comfort zone with situations.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump to Plead, the 5th segment of the show.
Step into our state-of-the-art innovation lab and create your digital future. Oz uses cutting-edge technology and 22 years of industry knowledge to enhance customer experience through digital innovation in a variety of expertise. Oz is a leading global consulting company whose services and solutions are trusted by startup, midsize, and even Fortune 500 companies. Get to know more about Oz's Salus, a mobile solution bringing us back to max capacity, and their latest solution, Rainmaker, saving insurance companies years of work. To learn more about Oz and their exciting technologies, visit followoz.com. That's FOLLOWOZ.com.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. As a reminder, you catch all these episodes live every single week, right around 1 o'clock at Shrimp Tank Boca on all our different social accounts. So, Kevin, I'm going to let you do the honors to make each of them plead the fifth.
Okay, good. I'm more than glad to kick things off. I've heard Angelo's story a couple times, and it is, very serious and a very serious issue and impactful. There's a lighter part of that story that I feel like rightfully perhaps gets often overlooked. And so I have a two-part question. Because you don't really strike me as the right size or shape to look like a Christmas elf. So I would like to know, is that video still available, and where can I and other listeners view that video of you on the beach dressed up like a Christmas elf? Because I should like to see it.
You know what? I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's, if Patriot Sports Nutrition's Instagram is still up and running, I'm pretty sure it's on there.
All right. Well, it seems like it'd be worth a watch. That's got to be unique. Let's put it that way.
Can we get you, Kevin, during a holiday time to put on one of those outfits?
For
the Shrimp Tank?
For the right price, you can get me to do anything.
Okay. I think we got a future YouTube video coming.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go with a layup. Natalia, what is your biggest pet peeve working with Angelo?
Oh God, where do I start?
Or if you don't want to answer, you say the words, I plead the fifth.
I played the fifth.
Okay, smart. She wants to keep her job. Okay, we just got one more to go, Kevin.
Keep my job.
You're up.
All right.
Can you get Angelo plead the fifth?
Oh, sure. What's the least impactful, most nonsense veterans support nonprofit organization you're aware of?
Ooh, call them out.
There's
Call
some
'em
that
out.
are out there.
Full of crap ones. Come on, let's go.
Oh man.
He's either thinking pleading the fifth, or he's about to name like 30 companies.
Because there are so many, I'm just gonna plead the fifth.
After the show, though, we're gonna find out.
After the show, we're all gonna find out, guys.
We'll be like,
all right.
That's a list.
Well, thank you guys for joining us here on the Shrimp Tank today. For our audience listening, if they want to get in touch with you to collaborate with you, number one. Number two, if they're a veteran and want to, attend one of the events, what are the best routes to reach out to you guys?
They can find us on Instagram, Barracks Legend Foundation, or they can go to the websites www.barrackslegendfoundation.com. I know it's long. BLF was not available. And they can find us on Twitter, on
Facebook, LinkedIn.
We'll link everything on today's episodes in the comments and the notes. Thankfully, you don't have to worry about people typing in and spelling anymore. Everyone just clicks. No one has the capabilities of typing in anything more than like 7 digits anymore. It figures it out on its own nowadays with Google
you'll find it,
and Microsoft Word and all other Gmail accounts, of course. Well, thank you guys for joining us on the Shrimp Tank today. Everyone listening, back next Wednesday around 1 o'clock. Take care.
Thank you.
Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is